Imagine walking into your boss's office and giving notice because your writing has become your primary revenue stream. Or your podcast is successful enough that you can quit your day job. Or maybe having your marketing on autopilot so you can spend your time on the art career you love rather than on marketing. Are you a creative person who's great at what you do, but marketing makes you freeze? You're not alone. I help passionate, purpose-driven creatives overcome fear, find their brand voice, and build a marketing strategy that works for them. Oh yeah, I also make it easy and painless. It's never too late to grow the business you've been dreaming about. Book an introductory call with me, Rob Southgate, at southgatesmallbusiness.com today. And let's take the pain out of marketing together. Horsemen Publications is back at Indy PopCon with 14 incredible authors and more books than ever before. Meet and get books signed by Erica Lance, Valerie Willis, J.M. Paquette, Eric Deckers, Rick Hines, Morgan Moreau and Katie Jenkins, Nick Smith, P.C. Nottingham, Andy T. Hansen, Chelsea Burton Dunn, and K.N. Fitzwater. Catch them all at the Four Horsemen booth at Indy PopCon. PopCon Indy runs June 25th through the 29th, 2025 at the Indianapolis Convention Center. Get more information and order tickets at popcon.us/popcon-indy or click the link in this episode's show notes. But wait, we can't start yet. You need to know about today's podcast. This is an interview from 2024 that was only shared through newsletters and Facebook pages. Since we now have an Ink Blots podcast and don't want you to miss out on these fantastic interviews, I decided to share them here. Make sure to check the current lineup at events that we talk about on these shows. You want to make sure that the authors we're interviewing are appearing this year. Okay, back to the podcast. Welcome to Ink Blots, the show where I interview authors about their lives, writing, and the books they love. Be sure to follow the Ink Blots podcast on Substack. Not only can you listen to the latest episodes, but our Substack also has interview transcriptions and links to books and other items that we talk about on the show. If you like what we're doing, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. It really helps us and our sponsors out. Oh, and leave comments. We really do read and respond to every one. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to Ink Blots. I am today's host, Rob Southgate. I say today's because the plan is to have different hosts doing this, but so far it seems to all be me. So today I have with me Val Willis. Valerie, there's all sorts of names we could call you, but never call her late for dinner.
Hey,
that's my joke, my standing joke, which is terrible.
Hot wings, I love it all.
So, Val, welcome to the show. Let's start with this. Val is going to be one of the authors that is at PopCon Louisville. She's been at all the PopCon or all the Writers Row events, and you know her, you love her, you've seen her on panels, and if you haven't, you've missed out. So, Val, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do? We'll get into your books and all that in a second. Let's hear about you.
So, in case you don't know who I am by now, I am an award-winning fantasy romance author. I like writing broody, angsty boys. A lot of my work has a lot of mythology, dark history, and all those implications shoved in there some way, somehow. And it's just been a really great time. I write under several names. So Valerie Willis is most famous for the Cedric series and author books called The Writer's Bane. With formatting and research. Then you have V.C. Willis. That's where I write my male romance. Runaway vampire prince falls in love with human priest kind of vibes. And then last but least, the most famous name of all is Honey Cummings. And that's where I write spicy erotica with cryptids, ghosts, and things that go bump at night.
And bump, and bump, and bump. Okay. I had to get my joke in there.
Everyone does.
Everybody. So, well, Val, that was a lot that you've put out there. How many books do you think you've written?
Oh God, I was just thinking about this because there's 5 in the Trayvon family saga. There's 5 in Cedric, so now we're already at 10. And then the trilogy, that's 13. The short story collection, that's 14. Then the Honeycombings novellas, which is like 6 more. And then the 10 short story collection. So we'll just sum that up as one novel. So now I think I'm pushing 20. And
Yeah,
then
you're at about 21 right now.
um and then do we count all the anthologies that have partaked
We'll
in
go with
the
21 plus a bunch of anthologies and maybe some ghost writing. We'll just say
Oh, and then
that.
2 Writer's Spain books. And then I helped create the author's accountability planner, designing that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's lots.
it's a lot. And that doesn't even include what I've written as a ghostwriter.
Right. We're not counting that, but
We're not counting those.
that's there too. Well,
So I've
okay.
written a
So
lot.
we've got multiple series we're talking about. I know that at Writers Well, we try to bring maybe the first, sometimes one or two in a series. Uh, let's just break down the series real quickly because I want people to hear what they're about, get them excited about them so they can come and buy them and get them signed. Oh, the other thing, well, no, we won't do that. Let's just talk about these series. I get ahead of myself. Too much coffee, man. Cedric series. Give us a thumbnail about that.
All right. So we have a couple couples. No one's human, which is the fun part about it. We have these strong creatures, whether they're werewolves, vampires. Cedric, in particular, is an incubus vampire cross made with black magic. He's very pissed off at the world. I wanted an anti-hero, right? I wanted someone who is, you look at him and you're like, that guy's an a-hole, right?
Right,
And I enjoy those, especially when I read as a reader, I enjoy books like that. I mean, look at
right.
The Witcher. It's a great example of that dark fantasy with an a-hole, and but there's always that hint of romance. So that's sort of what I wanted to do. I had read Twilight and got angry, and I'm like, these are fairies. And I was like, let's write something about vampires, how I see them, inspired by really, really old variations of superstitions, mythology, dark history, um, and things like that. So that's what I aimed when I started the Cedric series. So as you go through the books, there's 5 so far, and I'm still going. I try to double down at different mythology, so you get this nice flavor of something a little different mythological and history wise with each one. So like Cedric is really inspired, his story, his character, everything about the Russian knight hero tales and Ilya Muromets. Even his horse's name is derived from the
Oh,
horse that
cool.
this hero had, Barushka. Um, very Russian sounding, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But I also loved pulling in these medieval bestiary creatures that people were like, well, what is that? What is that? And then all these different variants. So it's been a lot of fun. And of course, the most recent release was King Incubus, and I doubled down on Caribbean based lore for that.
Oh, cool.
And people were like, and it was funny because like my friend, his dad's from Cuba, and we were talking about it. And he's like, well, what should I ask my dad when I see my dad? You should ask him about the saguapa. And he's like, what the hell's that? And I kind of explained it to him. So he went home. He's like, Dad, you know what saguapa is? And his dad's like, oh, your uncle. They almost took your uncle. And he's like this whole he had never gotten these stories out of his dad before. So that's sort of like what the kind of conversations I want my fictional series to spur, that there's enough of the mythology and stuff there that people are being reintroduced to it
Yeah.
and reminded that these were things that our ancestors believed in, and maybe most people still do in a weird way. So
Well,
that's the
that reminds me. I remember reading when Neil Gaiman first was writing Sandman, and Sandman is just it's kind of
oh,
everything all at once, right? But it's awesome. And I remember him talking about how, like, because somebody had asked him some interview, about writing this and all the mythology and all the folklore, and he said, "Well, in order to write this story that I wanted to tell and to expose people to all these stories, that's what I did. I didn't write for 20 years." I
yeah.
read folklore and took notes and mythology and all that. And that's why when you read it, you feel like there's this connective tissue to all this stuff. And you start learning like that might be a real thing or that's something people believed in. And I love that. You have sold me on Cedric. I've known you for a while now. I've sold the book, but I had never heard the description from your mouth. Now I'm like, that sounds like exactly the type of book I would love.
Yeah. No,
All
I
right, so
get,
everybody has to buy it when they're at
yeah,
Writers Row.
yeah. I mean, like I said, it's always great when I get reader newsletter, emails and responses, because I even had someone say that after reading Roma Santa, they did it inspired them to take a classic Roman summer course. And
Cool.
the teacher asked if anyone was familiar with the tale of Romulus and Remus. And he's like, well, sort of, but I know after, that this author is inspired by real mythology and history. And the guy's like, well, what do you know? And he like, because when you're reading the novel, you're not just reading about the mythology, you're experiencing it, right?
Right,
I
right.
built a fictional vehicle for you to, and I put you in the passenger seat and just, we cut loose, right? And you experience things firsthand. His teacher said it was the most, he says, first off, you knew their mother's name. He says, you knew what happened to the brother and who they were battling with. You knew
Yeah,
this, that the dilemma they were in with the fact that Rome was having an issue of it was 20-1 men to women,
that's
because
an
it was
issue.
the military that was building a city. Um, and he's like, you knew all this information. He says, I've never had someone bring me like the complete, like, he says, and I'm trying to figure out how you combined all 6 variants of this history to me. And he says, well, the fake part was probably him getting eaten by a werewolf.
Probably.
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 Even though they were said to be born from a she-wolf.
Maybe it was a dog man. Okay, now you need to write Cedric. Now I'll buy this book. You write one that is based on puck wedgies. Because
Yes, that's my favorite. That's
I want to read all about puck
listen,
wedgies.
listen, Linda, listen. There is a puck wedgie in the Honeycombings urban legend that keeps
What?
causing mischief. And his name is Timmy, because Timmy.
Timmy, the puck wedgie. Oh my God. Oh my God.
And he's shown
You're
up a
making me
couple
read this
times,
now
but I
because,
haven't.
oh my God.
They're my favorite. I just haven't gotten to his story because I'm building upon it, because he's got bets uh with the Sasquatch who works for the Jersey Devil.
Of
As
course.
one does.
Of course. You're starting to build a hierarchy of cryptids. I like that. I like that. Uh, okay, let's before we talk about the next series, let's go back a step. You've obviously been writing for a while. You don't have that many books without like, oh, I just started a week ago. What inspired you to become a writer?
Um, as a kid, I was tongue-tied. So like talking was not my first language in a way. It was reading and writing, and I could disconnect, I could communicate, like it that you know, that that talked to me.
Yeah.
And I would make up these little stories or draw these little doodles, and people would be like, oh, they would gush over them, right? And it just, there's something about that interaction of sharing this imaginary thing and people connecting with it, like I connected with it
Yeah.
before starting to put it down to paper. So by 5th grade, I am filling composition books full of just handwritten stories of a girl plane crashing in Africa and surviving. That was a lot of those 90s movies. So
Yeah,
I can
right, right.
imagine that had a lot to do with it. But like writing these stories. And then I have to say, I got to give kudos to a lot of my middle school English teachers, because they started submitting my poems and my stories to places, and I was getting my stuff into these anthologies and
That is
stuff,
amazing.
and that really encouraged me.
That is
But
super amazing. Yeah.
by high school, I knew that I could do things with my writing. My writing could move boulders for me a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and it also became a stress relief. I did not have exactly the best home life, um, and that impact did not, seriously, it did not hit me. Like, I knew it was rough, but it didn't hit me fully until my 20-year high school reunion, when everyone knew who I was, uh, remembered my story,
Oh boy.
and some of them still had copies of the original binders because I had several
Wow.
binders with several of the same story in it. And that story I ended up publishing. It's the Tattooed Angels trilogy. So you
Okay,
read dark
cool.
YA urban fantasy with a lot of historical, it's almost like a alt history piece because a lot of that research is very on point. Especially in book 2, when he starts to when you travel with the older brother to see what has transpired through time to
Yeah.
cause the events that have unfolded in book 1. Um, but they all remembered that, like, it blew my mind. Like, you remember a story that some kid just grabbed you at the end of the school day and said, "Hey, can you keep this in your locker? Because if I brought it home, my mom would trash it or light it on fire." And I
Right.
didn't want that to happen to this story because something felt special about that story in particular.
Right.
And it must have been because here I am 20 years later, and I've got my entire class that I was the shy, quiet one. And even though I was in the high honors classes and AP classes on occasion, um, I was sort of the outcast and quiet and muted because I just wanted to be as successful as I could so I could get away from home life, right? So it was just wild, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's that alone that drives me to continue to write to this day. The idea of sharing those imaginary worlds and characters and other people being impacted the same way or memorizing them. It is there's no other feeling like that.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's super cool. That's why these cons and things are so important for authors. Going to panels and having somebody uh like express to you what you've meant to them, that's fuel. I
Oh
remember
God.
I did a library con and I met this person there who wrote some modules for like a D&D thing,
Mhm.
right? And they've been doing this for a while. And a person, I was standing there in line to talk to him, really nice guy, right? And this person next to me was this younger guy, and he starts telling me, he's like, "Oh my gosh, I have his stuff. I have his book," and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." And what it turned out it was like copies that he had made and put them together and like stapled them. He was calling that this guy's book.
Yeah.
And later on, I'm interviewing the guy out at the Blue Box, and I brought this up, and he's like, "I don't have a book." I was like, "No, no, he had it stapled together. Did he not show you?" And he goes, "No." And
Oh.
he said, "I know who you're talking about, though." He was like, you know, googly eyed when he came up. He says, "Nobody does that to me." I'm like, "Well, this kid was so affected by what you wrote. He was hero worshiping, and then he was embarrassed to show you, or he felt intimidated, but he called it your book." I mean, how cool is that? You know?
Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I really get that. Okay. You talked about Tattoo Angels a little bit. Let's talk about the third like thing, your trilogy, or not trilogy. It's not a trilogy. That was Tattooed Angels, the
Yeah.
Trevon family saga.
Okay,
So
so I'm a big fan of male romances. A friend recommended the genre to me. I fell in love with the genre because the character development was so good. Like, I wasn't getting that same level of just fine wine on my tongue kind of vibe from a lot of the fantasy romance I was reading at the time, because I like characters who struggle, who have a lot of internal and external turmoil,
sure,
and sometimes one or the other falls flat, and it doesn't connect all the way through with the plot, where male romance does this very well because of a lot of the topics that they traverse. And then I realized I couldn't find a fantasy male romance that didn't have modern themed issues constantly coming up.
sure.
Um, until the Captive Prince trilogy. Someone had read my rough draft of me playing around with the concept, and they said, "You need to read the
The
Captive
Captive
Prince
Prince
trilogy
trilogy. Okay,
and then really decide whether or not you're going to take this manuscript, revise it to make it stronger, and push it." Um, I read the trilogy, and it was ingenious because I basically the concept that they come out of the gate with that sets this whole sense of understanding, right? is that royalty, it was totally okay for royalty to have a same sex like interlude or
Mhm.
mistress or sir, because illegitimate children were even more taboo, right? So we've flipped a taboo one way versus the other way, right?
Sure.
And that simple little mechanic toggle being flipped changes how everything's understood in the entire trilogy, right? And I was like, huh. So then I went back to what I had already sort of pieced together of what I thought a male romance would be. And I said to myself, I said, well, I don't have a toggle because my world doesn't need any toggles. It's just a fantasy romance, which is what I write best, with this nice 1700s French fantasy vibe as a
Okay.
world where magic is ugly and has been taken away, but people are trying to break it back open, and it's not a pretty process, right? So there's sort of this hint of things, but it's told by one person's POV, and it's him struggling with where he wants to be in his world a little bit, right? Which everyone could has that problem, and him trying, to and then falling in love unexpectedly. And that drives a lot of his decision making is between those 2 points.
Right.
Um, and I was so scared to pitch it that I grabbed my queer friend and I said, please read this and tell me that it does not read like a heterosexual housewife
Which
prequel.
so many of these do. That's something I mean,
Because
I don't, that's not my genre, but I hear that from readers all the time.
sensitivity readers are vital when you're writing something. Not it's I have queer and gay friends and lesbian friends all day long, and I support that group. I adore you guys. I read your genres, right?
Yeah.
But I was also getting tired of male romance that always had the really jockey guy and then the femme boy who reminds him of the
Same
girl
thing
he
over
wants
and
to
over.
crush with. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I want two masculine, very masculine guys who know that they love each other. And it might be a little bit of a love at first sight with a lot of denial and internal turmoil about it, because he knows what he aims to be and he wants to support that, but supporting that means they can't be together. So there's a lot of conflict. Like, I'll
Right.
just be, admire him from the sidelines kind of vibe. And the other one's like, no, I don't want you to admire me. I want you to stand by me. So there's all this wonderful relationship development going on. Um, but suddenly at like 3 a.m., he sent me a text with chili peppers and he goes, girl. And I'm like, so I did okay. He says, you surprised me. He says, I thought I figured out top and bottom. And he's like, and then you did something so different and so raw and real. He says, it's 100 times better than I could have hoped. He says, you need to put.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so it's probably my two favorite characters I've ever written because of the way they interact with each other is glorious. It's not a toxic relationship, which is also a common theme in fantasy romance. Because I get kudos from that. I had a book reviewer from Jamaica message me, and she's like, "Girl," I get the girl response a lot with this one.
Lots of chili peppers on it, a girl on there. Yeah.
And it's crazy because the first book's a slow burn, but that wall's broken down at the end of book one. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Prince Dante. You're not going to be able to put that wall back up. John won't let you.
Yeah.
Well, he's like, no, we already know now. In fact, I just turned in book 3 for this, and book 4 is almost done. So people get to look forward to the next two
Wow.
things of it. But it it was really crazy kind of because I was so insecure about it. Even though I'd written all these other books, I felt so insecure because I was outside my element, and the last thing I wanted was to misconstrue or stereotype things.
Right.
And that is, people think, oh, you just sit down and write the story, but there's a lot more to it, especially when you're commercializing and you're wanting to connect with people. You have to be very aware of who that audience is and the best way to communicate with them. And that's why Stephen King's advice, go and read your genre or read the genre you want to write in. You want to, because you want to see where can you do better. You want to
Right.
see how they're already being communicated with. Because in fantasy romance, I don't need to tell them it's a dark, brooding world. No, they picked up a dark fantasy romance.
Right.
They already have a lot of assumptions about the setting, the tone, and things like
It
that.
says dark fantasy on here. Is it going to be dark and fantasy?
Is there going to be some sense of magic and other beings other than humans?
Yeah. Hmm.
Are bad are when things go bad, do they go bad, bad? Or is it just uncomfortable?
Well, I like
And
the genre puckwedgie. That's the one I'm waiting to see. Dark puckwedgie. Uh,
dark poetry.
okay, so let's get into a couple of questions that are outside of your books. Now people know what to buy. They know who you are. They want to come get signatures at PopCon Louisville. Uh, okay. Here's a question that I ask on my show, Alley Chats, and I've been getting really fun answers, so I'm going to ask you.
All right.
Imagine this is your dream convention. So we've just taken all the restrictors off. Who is it that you would most want to meet and have a conversation with?
Right now, Jennifer Armentrout. I've been burning through her Blood and Ash series and the character development and the foreshadowing, and it's really good. I just started book 3, and it feels like someone just strapped me into like a race car, and like they're revving the engine for those first 2 or 3 chapters, and then they keep just racing around and then hard stopping and then racing around, and I'm like, I'm exhausted, but it's a good thrill ride after 2 books of stuff just building and building, and now I'm in like full speed mode with book 3. Like her
Wow.
pacing, the narrative tone, her diet, like everything about it, I am absolutely loving. It's probably because I was saying earlier that one of my frustrations about 10 years ago was that fantasy romance was having a hard time getting all those check marks for me for character development. This series is hitting on those check marks. Like I'm seeing things. You have a character who's been sort of brainwashed or raised with a different understanding of how the world works, and she's unlearning that and learning new, and there's all this conflict, and you don't know if people are lying to her or telling her the truth, and she can't understand. You don't know how much she's misconstrued. Like this whole unreliable aspect of it adds to that reader immersion, and you're trying to piece it together as the reader, and you're like, no, 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 girl, you got it wrong. You're like,
Right.
it feels like it's so good of character development. The anticipation and reader immersion is really good for this. So that I would love to sit down and just gush about her craft and what she'd done, and how much of it just naturally flowed because the characters were yammering in her ear, or how much of it she had to really take a minute and think about. And that's always an interesting conversation with fellow writers, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this part was awesome. And I'm like, I didn't plan on that. They just told me what to write.
Yeah, right, right, right. Wow. Oh, that's a good one. I haven't had her before as an answer. Okay. Last question. Since you've done Writers Row before, you see the lineup. Is there anybody in this lineup that you are most excited to meet? And by the way, we haven't announced everybody yet. Just know.
All right. This is a little biased, but I'm actually excited to actually be running a tabled event with Paige Lavoie. Me and Paige, so there's a backstory here. So I was paid to teach a character development workshop for the first time, and this has been oh God, this has been like 2010, 2012,
Okay.
somewhere between there. And this girl walks in dressed for Bastille's Day. Like she
Oh, let me
has
guess who that is.
it's Paige. And and she was so sweet, and she stood out, and she just had this glow to her, right? And of course, through the years, because we're part of the same writer community and stuff like that, I got to know her. She's been self-publishing longer than I have ever thought about self-publishing. And she was starting to land manuscripts at other publishers, and then she'd get in the door, and then things that I had talked about in workshops, and she would come to me or message me for advice. She says, that thing happened. And I would be like, well, which thing? Because I
Yeah.
talked about a lot of things. She says, they contracted me for this monster romance, and it's supposed to be like a sweet steamy romance, and they want me to undo that and make it a horror piece. I said, Paige, let's be honest, your author branding, let's just look at your author branding says that's not what you write, and you would never be able to sell that book to your audience.
Right.
You would never, and these are things that happen all the time in the industry. And because I used to get asked, why aren't you traditional? It's not because I didn't try, it's because I tried, and then I realized that's not what I wanted, because I didn't like losing that control. And there was a certain direction I wanted to go to. And I also enjoy helping other authors. So when she decided to finally submit it for Horsemen, I was like, yes.
Yeah, right.
Ended up with I'm in Love with Mothman as one of our biggest books to this day.
Right.
But it's crazy that all the time I hear stories of people signing these contracts with the big five or big publishers, and they just want to completely break the branding, break what the initial.
It makes no sense.
And it makes no sense. I'm like, is it because you had someone ask you, we want a Mothman story, and that was the closest thing, and it's easier to rewrite a thing than write something raw? I don't know.
Yeah.
I suspect that's the case in a lot of places.
I do too. I mean, you see it in, I mean, you even see it in podcast networks. You see it in TV,
but
you see it in movies and books. It's there.
I've never ran a table with Paige.
It's going to be fun. So
I'm like, yes, for the first time, Paige as an author, me as an author, get to run a table event or be part of the same event It's gonna be the first time. I've known her for, like I said, like over 10 years now. So I'm kind of excited for that, because it's fulfilling a thing I haven't done yet, with someone that I feel like we've made a huge difference for.
I assume she's going to come in jeans and a t-shirt too.
Oh no, absolutely.
No, of course.
She'll look like a princess.
I know.
I always tell people she reminds me of a 1950s housewife. You know?
Yeah. Well, we're also going to have Molly there who brings the outfit. So she knows Paige is going to be there. So look out. We're going to have like a fashion thing going on at our booth.
Yeah.
So, well, all right. Once again, everybody, you can meet Val. You can buy her books. You can talk about cryptids and crushes with her, get selfies, see her at panels, get autographs, all at PopCon Louisville. This is 2024 for anyone listening another year. This is the year that we're there, that she's there, and you want to make sure you get tickets, which the link will be in the show notes on this too. Val, thank you so much. I can't wait until PopCon.
No, I'm so excited. I have a great time. I like gushing about all the books, not just my own. So